Hello, my name is Damian Pardo, and I'm City of Miami Commissioner for District 2. And we're here today because we're going to have a conversation about derelict boat vessels, derelict vessels in the City of Miami Beach. To my right, I have Lieutenant Couto, City of Miami Marine Patrol, DC, City of Miami Marine Patrol, and Commissioner David Suarez, City of Miami Beach. Commissioner David Suarez actually passed the legislation on derelict boat vessels, and in District 2, we're attempting to put it on the agenda for the next coming commission meeting and hopefully get that passed as well. So I want to open it up, Commissioner, with you and talk a little bit about the legislation and how you got it through the whole process.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. So one of the things that many residents reached out to me while I was campaigning just a little over 2 years ago was this sort of infiltration of encampments on our waterways. It turns out that many of these individuals were buying these crappy boats, $500, $1,000. They would get it tugged and anchored into our waterways, and then they would rent them out on Airbnb on a monthly or nightly basis. To add to the sort of plague of derelict vessels, they also would add boats as just storage for their contents.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and before you know it, if you look on Google Maps, 10 years ago there was maybe like 5 boats. Just a little bit over 6 months ago, there was, I think, over 200. And since COVID, and many of the loopholes, unfortunately, in our state law, it allowed for this proliferation of derelict vessels, marine squatters, if you will. And for the longest time, the cities were preempted from passing any sort of restrictions on the waterway. What we did at the City of Miami Beach before the state of Florida passed the law is we try to limit and regulate who can have free access to Miami Beach. Because before there was this free public dock where a lot of these sort of squatters would come and they would leave their trash. They would use it for egress and incoming and outgoing. They would leave their dinghies there for all day. And mind you, they pay no property taxes.
Right.
They contribute nothing to our city. At the same time, while they'll use services like Marine Patrol, fire rescue, and they'll use the water at the dock, and it's sort of it's sort of like a leech on our city. So once I quickly realized that there was not much the city can do except enforce incoming, outgoing, which is very hard, by the way. I'm sure Marine Patrol can assess because you can't be everywhere all at once. My next issue was taking it to the state. And what I did, I led an initiative. I took out half a dozen state senators and representatives on our Marine Patrol boat, and I showed them the issues both on the Miami side and on Miami Beach side. And they couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe what was going on. I mean, there were sunken boats, which were anchored to other boats.
No, we see it. I mean, we see it in Grove Marina. We see it in the Spoil Islands, the Venetian Islands, Miami Marine Stadium basement, all of the mooring fields on the periphery.
And it's a big blight. It's a big public safety hazard. Yeah. So if you are on your boat driving and there's a sunken boat, you can hit it and you can seriously damage your boat. You can get injured, and as we all know, there's been a lot of fatalities on the water because of accidents, especially in Miami Beach and the city of Miami. And so finally this came to a head, and I helped draft a bill that gave the cities or municipalities and the counties the ability to adopt a restriction. And that is a 30-day anchoring limit in a 6-month period in any county or municipality. And so with that, now the city actually has, a city or municipality or county has control, if adopted, to say that after 30 days, if you are anchored here for 30 nights, you have to leave the county or the city. It depends on how your ordinance is drafted. And luckily, for the first time in a long time, the state of Florida actually gave municipalities the control of their destiny. It's usually the other way around. But in this particular situation, we kind of know what's best, right? I mean, the Marine Patrol in Miami knows what's going on. Marine Patrol in Miami Beach knows what's going on, more so at the state level. So I'm really glad that this law is passed. In fact, I went ahead and I emailed every municipality that touches the water that would be subject to this ordinance in the state of Florida. And so...
Well, that's what got us going.
Yeah.
We received that email and we're like, wow, this is great. Wonderful leadership on your part and the state. And we said, we've just got to move forward as much as we can.
Yeah, because, if we adopt the ordinance, it's just going to push the problem somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to in your backyard.
It's going to impact us because you already passed it.
And that's why I wanted everyone to know that this is a law that you can easily pass. And I'm not trying to push the problem on anyone else's backyard, Surfside, North Bay Village, or City of Miami. So it's important that we sort of all get on board and we really enforce.
No, we very much appreciate it. I wanted to turn it over to you, Lieutenant Couto, and just if you could talk a little bit about, because I know one thing is legislation, and then there's real life.
Yes.
And enforcement and what you all deal with kind of on a day-to-day basis.
So basically this legislation is going to give us somewhat of power now. Before, DC handles most of the derelict vessels in the city of Miami. But now with this legislation coming into power, they cannot anchor more than 30 days, 1 hour after sunset, 1 hour before sunrise, I'm sorry. So this will give us, help us clean up the waterways and make it more, environment friendly for the boaters out there.
It gives free access to the waterways, which is what it should be.
Should be.
It should not be an encampment, or what's been going on is used for profit on the waterways. Public access should not be used for private profit in any city, in my opinion. So,
and DC, in your case, I mean, you get most of them. What do you see as the most kind of egregious, the worst case scenarios with some of these vessels?
Well, as we all know, these derelict vessels, like the commissioner said, they become navigational hazards.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have anchor lights, or their anchor, gets tangled with another anchor, or they could become submerged. So our job here in the city of Miami, especially as far as derelict vessels, I've been doing it for now 10 years. We identify the derelict vessel. We add a notice on the vessel. We automatically do a title stop. Why with DNV?
What is that? How does that work?
So we contact DNV, and
what's DNV?
Department of Motor Vehicle.
Okay.
And we go ahead and do a title stop, so they're not able to sell their vessel. So once they see that notice, it's happened before, and we don't do the title stop, then it's easy for them to say, hey, listen, we're going to sell this vessel quickly because now it has the police, eyes on, etc. So we add a notice, we do a title stop, and then we start a case file on the vessel. We look for the last known owner. 90% of the time here with a derelict vessel is, I sold my boat to John Doe, who sold it to John, and then it has 15 different owners, and we look for the original owner. Your job as a vessel owner is to go to a tag agency and sign that title over. Get that title printed with your name on it, because if not, you will be responsible for removing your vessel.
And do people do that, or they don't? They don't. And that's one of the hazards of not doing it properly.
Unfortunately, the Marine Patrol ends up becoming just an administrative, nightmare.
Yeah.
And hats off to you. You guys should be out there stopping bad guys, actually stopping real threats on the water. Instead, you're just doing investigative work on who owns a vessel, and that has to be done by a police officer, and it takes up a tremendous amount of resources and time. And the way the laws were written for derelict vessels, it was very difficult to cite it as a derelict vessel, because you need 2 out of the 3 issues. You need a working motor, right, or propulsion,
correct,
steering, and you cannot have any holes in the deck or cabin. Okay, so what many of these boats do, they don't have any holes in the deck, because if they did, it would be sunk. They have steering because look, you can see my.
I can turn the
you can
little
see
wheel.
it, and then the biggest issue that they have is they didn't have a motor. But when Marine Patrol would go and do a propulsion test, they'd have to give them 72 hours to do that.
So they grab a motor.
So they would grab a motor from their neighbor, bolt it on, and a propulsion test is 1 mile, right? 1 mile back in a certain period of time. They can do it, and then they pass. And then when they go to court, the officer has to testify that they passed the Marine Patrol test. And by law, the judge says, "Okay, you have passed it, so you're not derelict." And it's just a game of whack-a-mole. And so that's how many of these squatters were allowed to skirt the rules for the longest time. And what this law does, it doesn't matter if you swap an engine out or not. The waterways is supposed to be free and clear. It's really, it's funny because the actual transients from the Northeast, real cruisers, would used to come to Miami Beach and anchor for maybe a week or two, and then they would go on to the Bahamas or the Keys.
And Marine Stadium, right?
But they don't come anymore. They don't come anymore because they're scared that when they do anchor, they're going to get their lines cut, they're going to get their vessels damaged or vandalized.
How much of that actually happens?
All the time.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Really?
Often.
Yeah.
Especially the liveaboards we have in the city of Miami, the inner key area. Unfortunately, one steals from another, and especially if you leave your boat out there, without cameras, or they'll go ahead and report it with the police where they stole, solar panel, let's say, or a battery. So
It's
like pirates almost.
Well, to a certain extent, they are pirates. You ever see that really bad movie Waterworld? It's like a really bad version of Waterworld. I mean, with Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and listen, it's a long time coming, and so this ordinance gives the police officers just another tool for enforcing the law on the waterways, and it encourages good behavior, and it certainly helps clean up our waterways.
Another thing Commissioner said is, it gives us another tool in our tool belt. That's basically what we're trying to do. Another good thing about this legislation is you guys are not, adding about 200 feet. So before it was 100 feet, you can't anchor from a mooring field. Now it's 300 feet.
Right.
So this assists us a lot. We got the Watson Island, we got the basin. So all of these, and we tie into Miami Beach as well. So, and we work closely with Miami Beach Marine Patrol. So this legislation, like you said, Commissioner, is, it's just another tool belt. And thank you for spearheading this and getting this on board for us.
No, we have to. I mean, we have to make these changes. I wonder how much of what you see out there is also environmental, like spillage of gasoline and oil.
Well, that's another issue. Is
if they're derelict.
Not a lot of these boats, since they do not move, they discharge their black and gray water tanks into the water.
Yeah,
you'll see many of them fill up water. They'll go with their dinghies. They'll fill up like 10 of those 5-gallon Zephyrhills jugs, but you'll never see them dump their waste, and that's because they're dumping it directly into Biscayne Bay. And for the state of Florida to be investing in.
Is there any way to find that? Is there anything you can do when you see that happen?
And I'll let Marine Patrol talk about this, but you could do a dye test in the water, but in order for that to happen, the liveaboard has to be really dumb, because they'd have to have their Y valve open. And so if you see Marine Patrol coming with their lights on, knocking on your door, the first thing you're going to do is just close your Y valve.
Close it, yeah.
And so it's funny. I actually, in my beach, when this became a big topic, there were 2 out of, I think, 30 vessels checked. And that was a lot, in my opinion, because there shouldn't have been none.
Yeah.
But the fact that there were 2 means there were, 2 too many. And they're all connected on like WhatsApp or Instagram or Telegram, and they'll spread out the word saying, "Hey, they're checking our holding tanks. Make sure your Y valves are closed."
And we work closely with Coast Guard, so anything related to that, we'll have to get Coast Guard on board to, if we do see them littering, and then they will have to call and see something, say something. So we'll get on board, and then we'll cite for littering. But other than that, it would be kind of hard for us to be, we would need Coast Guard to come and help us and assist us. And we work closely with Coast Guard. So
Yeah, whenever we have a vessel that's submerged, we'll contact the National Response Center, which is through the United States Coast Guard, and they'll report and they'll investigate. And if there's any sheen in the water, they'll investigate further. And but that's it. They'll put a boom around the sheen and they'll contain it. That's about it. The derelict vessel still falls on us.
Really?
Correct, and it's going to be upon the taxpayers of whatever
Right,
municipality
of
it
course.
happens, and that typically runs anywhere between $8,000 and $15,000, depending on the size of the boat.
Per derelict boat,
Correct,
just to remove it.
just to remove it.
Yeah, because
Incredible.
the derelict vessel, even though it's worth a couple $100, they don't just get it and auction it. They gotta actually dispose of the vessel. So I had one last year that cost $24,000, dinner key wrecked. So in order for it to be a derelict vessel, it has to be substantially dismantled, which, like the commissioner was saying, it's missing its engine, its sail, its mast. It has to be wrecked, or it has to be junked. If it falls in one of those categories, it's considered a derelict vessel.
And there's no way to move that like as a liability or a debt to the original owner? I mean,
We contact the original owner. Their
but
responsibility
there's no way
is-
to collect what the city has put out.
Right. So I'm glad you asked that. So once we remove the vessel, we dispose of the vessel, I go ahead and send a separate letter to the last known owner advising him or her, you owe XYZ amount, you have 30 days to pay it. If they don't pay it within 30 days, the clock starts ticking now. And then I send DNV, Department of Motor Vehicle, a separate letter advising them to revoke their rights to register any vehicle or any vessel in the state of Florida until they pay XYZ amount. And we have received the several payments to the city of Miami as well.
Oh, that's great. At least, there's some measure of accountability.
Yeah, but
would be-
unfortunately, many of them
Right.
don't care. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they could afford a car, right? And because they're living on the water. So,
Yeah.
it is what it is, unfortunately, but I don't believe that our waterways should be a campground, especially when they're being discharged into the bay or when they're being used for profit.
Are there still loopholes there? Can you go away for 30 days and come back, or?
Well, right now it's 30 days, 30 nights, and a 6-month period. And if they move out of the city, that's great.
Yeah.
You want them to, carry
Move
on.
on.
Right. You want them to be transit, right? Where it's not supposed to be a place to live on the water. It's like somewhat of a highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't park your car on the highway and live there for a week. Stay maybe on an overpass for a day or two, and then you carry on.
I'm curious, now that you did, you brought everyone together, you probably know more about the subject than anyone else. What do you think? Is there a phase 2 to this where you can amplify it
I
even
think
more?
funding. I next year I'd like to have some funding for this. Right now,
Funding in what way?
so for example, after the 30 days,
Mhm.
you have to tow it. Then you have to store the vessel. You have to give a reasonable time for someone to pick it up. If they don't pick it up, then it gets disposed. That's going to cost money.
Of course.
And that's going to cost the taxpayers of the city money. However, in my opinion, I would rather pay for it then than pay for to resubmerge or unsubmerge a vessel while in the water after it's leaked fuel for like a couple months and it's been a navigational hazard. So there is certain state funding for derelict vessels, and I think the state should, now that we have this law, divert some of that money toward this law for a tow and dispose. Because at the end of the day, most of those vessels that are not capable of moving, or they're kind of skirting the rules with their friend's engine, are eventually going to end up in the water.
Yeah.
So I think it's incumbent upon the state to really, divert some of those funds for this program, because it's, what do they say? It's an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So I think it's going to be a lot cheaper to do a tow and dispose than have a crew come in and raise a vessel out of the water. It's substantially more expensive for that.
Is there any opportunity to maybe combine this with some of the efforts to keep, the bay waters clean, or to stop some of the oil and gasoline and other discharges from the vessels? Some other kind of enforcement that maybe isn't paired up yet?
You know, there are many laws in different states where you have to keep a lock on a on your Y valve, for example. You can't discharge unless it's. But I don't think that's practical here in Florida because we're such a big boating community. I think that's more for the Northeast, or I think also in California. But you know, I'd be more than happy to explore that. But again, I'm not a state representative or senator.
Right.
You know, I can only do so much for my own little city. And there was a big glaring problem in our city's waterways, and my main focus was just to solve it and give our Marine Patrol easy tools to enforce.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was curious, DC, what are some other tools that you might like to have?
Tools to have. I mean, right now we have the at-risk vessel program as well, where we work with. I'm not sure if the commissioner here knows with Florida Wildlife, and it's called, if the vessel's an at-risk vessel. Listen, if that owner wants to get rid of that vessel and it doesn't deem as a derelict vessel yet, you can go ahead and sign that title right over to FWC.
Yeah, I think when we were on our Marine Patrol thing, we saw one of those.
Yeah.
We saw one of those vessels.
Yeah, it cannot. It cannot be a derelict vessel. So they can't. The vessel now can't be submerged. And they call me and they're like, Officer Del Castillo, I want that. I want to go ahead and apply for that VTIP. Unfortunately, it's too late. It has to be an at-risk vessel. So that's a pretty cool tool that we have that we work hand in hand with Florida Wildlife.
And how does it work? They apply?
They got to get a citation for it. It's about $120 citation. They have to admit guilt, obviously, that it is an at-risk vessel, at risk of becoming derelict, and they have to show up to court, and that's it. They sign the title over to the state, and the state will go ahead and remove that vessel for them.
And that's the end of the story.
That's it. We've had vessels that were derelict floating, and where the owners are like, listen, I don't have money to remove this vessel. So they went ahead and they added that engine, that outboard engine, and they brought it back to compliance. And now we have a vessel that's no longer derelict, and they were able to apply for the at-risk vessel program. So that's another tool that we have that I think helps us out.
No, that's great. What about some things you'd like to change? Like if you had a magic wand, you could just go.
More funding to remove more
funding.
vessels. We removed, I think the city of Miami removed 79 vessels last year alone. 79 derelict vessels throughout Coconut Grove, Dinner Key area, Watson Island, the Miami River. I mean,
And if you had to say as a percent of overall derelict vessels, what does that represent? Would you say that's 20% of what's out there? Are we getting what's out there?
Well, what do you mean by derelict vessel?
Like when you see them, we see them. I mean, you're out there, you can see derelict vessels.
So derelict vessel is a loaded term, right?
Right.
It may look like the crappiest boat you've ever
That's what
seen,
I'm talking about.
but it's not. But
They look like boats that have been
but
abandoned.
technically, they're not derelict.
Got it.
And that's what Marine Patrol,
Right.
I think, trying to convey is that it's unsightly for sure. They might have gas cans on the top, or they might have like workout equipment on top and planters. But at the end of the day, if they do a propulsion test, they have steering and they don't have any holes in the deck, it's not derelict.
Correct.
So how do we control that?
With our ordinance.
Right. No, I mean, if they're non-derelict and they're just an eyesore and abandoned and encampment, what do we do? We just leave them there, or?
Well, before this ordinance went into effect in Miami Beach, that's all we could do.
We'll just leave them there. Yeah.
But now, only if it qualifies as derelict.
Well, the ordinance doesn't matter if it's derelict or not.
Perfect.
It's just a simple anchoring, whether it's any kind of vessel. It could be,
So it
any kind of boat.
captures the eyesores.
It captures any boat.
Any boat.
Any boat that is anchored 30 days or more in Miami Beach. It could be a big party boat.
Yeah.
And someone wants to just anchor for 30 days, it's going to capture that as well.
So I'm curious, just to go back to that question, what would you say, how big is the problem?
The problem is huge.
So when you say 79 boats, is that a big number relative?
It's a huge number.
If you don't mind me asking, how much did you spend last year?
I don't have the total amount now, but it's like give or take $6,000 to $12,000 a boat.
So you
79.
Again, we work also with DERM, the Department of Environmental Resource Management, which helps us out a lot in funding as well. Yeah. So they come into the city and they help us out.
$1.5 million, $1.3 million, $1.4 million, something like that.
And I'd say, Commissioner, maybe stricter fines because right now I know it's a $500 fine according to Florida state statute and stuff. But maybe if we hold these vessel owners more accountable for stricter penalties, more fines, I would think it would be, beneficial and another tool for us. Because mainly all the fines and the regulations that we control on the water, I believe they're lenient. So I think with stricter fines and like DC says, more funding, that would help us out.
Yeah.
More funding, probably more positions.
More, yes, absolutely.
Because you said it's heavily administrative. It's heavily
another way we can skin this cat would be to see, how they'd have to have a log of a pump out, for the pump out for their wastewater. And if you haven't had a valid pump out in the last 7 days, you get a violation. Therefore, you know if they've been here for 7 days and they haven't pumped out in 7 days, but they can't provide proof of it.
And how does that work? They have to log. How does a pump out work?
You go to any marina, or they also have pump out boats usually in mooring fields, but you have to be part of the mooring field. But for example, Miami Beach Marina, it's $10 to pump out with a vessel under 50 feet. And if a vessel over 50 feet is, I think, $20. You have to have a receipt for that shows within the previous 7 days. That would be another tool that they could use to enforce the waterways. Because if Marine Patrol is coming out every day, 30 days, they're checking their holding tank receipts. The squatter, the marine squatter, that's typical, is not going to want to stay in that city. They're going to be like, you know what, I'm just going to move on somewhere else.
And if they're not getting these receipts, I'm assuming that they're just dumping it in the ocean.
Yeah. And that's not even to account for when we have hurricane season. When we have hurricane season, a big hurricane comes, it doesn't even have to be that big. A lot of these boats, their anchors break. Then they damage public and private property. I think somewhere in the Midwest of Florida, I forgot which county, I think Palm Beach, one of these sailboats hit a sewer line, dumped millions of gallons of water in the bay or in the intercoastal because of that. So, I mean, it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before there's a hurricane that really just gets rid of all the boats, unfortunately, and it's upon the city to raise them out, pay for it, and dispose them. So this ordinance is going to be, very proactive in addressing that.
Well, listen, Commissioner, we're at the end of our time. I want to thank you very much for your leadership, for having passed this on. We're certainly taking your baton and moving forward with it. I want to thank our Marine Patrol, Lieutenant Couto, DC, for all of your hard work.
Thank you for having us.
You keep us out there safe on the water, and you keep us diligent as far as the city. So appreciate all of you. And for all of you viewers, thank you very much for joining us. See you next time.